Haruto is the main character, and he tells us about being bullied in middle school. This made him feel alone and sad. One day, while he is looking at his phone, a bright light surrounds him. Suddenly, he finds himself in front of a goddess. She tells him he has been chosen to be reincarnated. Haruto realizes he must have died in his room. The goddess warns him that magic is very important in the new world. To help him, she gives him a special boost. Excited about this chance, Haruto decides he wants to live a life like before, where he spends his days watching anime and playing games. In a flash, Haruto is reborn as a baby. He sees a king happily calling for his wife, Gelot, because they have a son with a special royal birthmark. Haruto feels happy thinking about a nice life. But then, the king uses a crystal ball to check how strong Haruto's magic is. The king believes that Haruto comes from a strong royal family, and he thinks their son will have powerful magic levels of about 40 or 50. However, the crystal ball shows that Haruto only has a magic level of 2 and no elemental powers. He can only use barrier magic. This makes the king and queen sad and worried that people will laugh at them. To hide their embarrassment, they plan to pretend that Haruto died when he was born. The king feels sad about the name they chose for him, Reinhardt. Haruto feels rejected when he overhears the king telling his servants to leave him in the forest. Meanwhile, the goddess who brought him back is talking to another god. She admits that she made a mistake and gave Haruto too high a level. The crystal ball couldn't see his real level, which is actually 1002. She also forgot to give him any elemental powers. That night, baby Haruto, wrapped in a blanket, tries to move. He decides to practice his barrier magic by imagining a cube. To his surprise, he easily creates a cubic barrier and plays around with different colors and shapes. He thinks about using the cube to protect himself and is excited when he lifts himself off the ground with his magic, realizing he can escape danger. Suddenly, a monster sneaks up on him. Haruto quickly tries to set up his barrier but almost gets eaten. He finds out that his barrier is really strong and starts throwing cubic barriers at the monster. When that doesn't work, he tries tossing trees at it, but the monster still doesn't back down. Determined, Haruto picks up a large piece of land with his barrier, ready to crush the monster. Then, the monster speaks. As they talk, Haruto refuses to go by the name Reinhardt and says he is just Haruto. The monster, surprised, apologizes and explains that it only wanted to eat him to get its magic back. Since Haruto can't talk clearly as a baby, he uses his magic to make his voice work. The monster is shocked to hear a baby talking and asks who Haruto is. Haruto tells the monster he was abandoned. The monster, sensing a lot of magic from Haruto, gets excited and asks if he is the reincarnated Demon King. Not wanting the monster to know about his past as a lonely shut-in, Haruto boldly claims he is the Demon King. This scares the monster, which then offers to serve him. Amused, Haruto decides to let the monster live as long as it doesn't attack him. The monster introduces itself as a flame fenner, but quickly gets tired of talking. Haruto wants to move on and names it Flay. But then Flay says that, since Haruto named her, they now have a master-slave agreement. Confused, Haruto starts to feel weak and sleepy because he hasn't eaten since he was born. To show loyalty, Flay turns into a human but realizes she has no clothes. Haruto quickly uses a barrier spell to cover her up. Feeling embarrassed, Flay wonders what to feed Haruto. Suddenly, they hear someone coming. A man appears, wanting to harm Flay, but is soon confronted by her. Flay demands to know why he is there and learns that he is related to Haruto's parents and has come to rescue the abandoned child. Flay accuses the man of having bad intentions, but he proves her wrong by showing he has brought breast milk for Haruto. Haruto is excited to finally eat something, feeling hopeful, but Flay still wants to know what the man really wants. He tells them his sad story about losing his own child and wanting to care for Haruto to make things right. Touched by his story, Flay realizes this man might be a better parent for Haruto. However, she insists that she will only allow him to raise Haruto if she can stay as his personal helper. The man agrees, and they work together to fake Haruto's death by destroying his basket. Fast forward 9 years, and Haruto is now living with the Margrave Gold family. He has loving parents and a younger sister named Char. Haruto is happy in his new home, but he notices that Char is very shy around him. Flea watches over them and encourages them to get closer. Haruto feels a bit jealous as he sees Char playing with Flea outside. They look like they're having a lot of fun, and he can't help but watch them. Haruto's mother sees that he looks sad and tries to cheer him up. She explains that Char is just shy and doesn't know how to act around boys. This makes Haruto wonder if Char thinks he is creepy, since he is an adult in a kid's body. His mother reminds him that he will one day inherit their family's wealth and suggests that he should play with Char instead of staying in his room. In his room, Haruto thinks about running away to live on his own, but he knows that Flea would be sad, and his family would feel hurt. He remembers the lonely times when he made a robot version of himself, but sadly the robot can't talk yet. He wonders if he can make robot copies of other people too. Suddenly, his father calls him from the yard. He tells Haruto that he will teach him how to use a sword. His father is worried that Haruto isn't using his magic potential and thinks Haruto has low magic levels. Haruto surprises his father by saying he wants to study ancient magic, but his father still wants to test Haruto's sword skills. They face each other, and Haruto feels his father's strong aura. His father, a great warrior known as the Earth-Shattering Warhammer, gets ready for their duel. Haruto uses his barrier magic and jumps toward his father, swinging his wooden sword. But his father easily dodges, causing Haruto's sword to break when it hits the ground. Haruto's father sees a big hole where Haruto's sword landed and takes a battle stance. He swings his sword at Haruto, who skillfully avoids the attack. His father realizes that only strong warriors can dodge like that. Haruto remembers trying to check his magic levels many times before, but nothing changed. He thinks the goddess gave him unlimited potential with barrier magic, because his mana level is low. Knowing Haruto still has much to learn, his father continues to train him while Char watches from a distance. That night, Haruto's father talks to his wife while Char sits on her lap. He mentions Haruto's amazing skills and wonders if he might be the child of a demon, since there are stories about the royal family experimenting with demons. His mother laughs this off, saying Haruto's abilities are because of the royal insignia, and explains why Flea, a demon beast, is so close to him. Despite their worries, both parents decide to raise Haruto like any other child, not knowing that Char is listening to everything. As Haruto lies in bed, he notices his father has been very busy lately, which makes him happy because it means he can skip sword training. Suddenly, he hears screams outside and decides to use his barrier magic to see what's happening. He is shocked to find many injured people. When he asks his father about it, he learns that his dad and his men went to catch some thieves, but got ambushed, leaving many soldiers hurt because his father acted too quickly. Seeing his father upset, Haruto goes back to his room. Before he enters, he hears Flea saying mean things about his father, and he quickly tells her to stop. Later, Flea goes out to heal the injured soldiers. That night, Flea waits outside Haruto's room, ready to say sorry for what she said about his dad. While they talk privately, Haruto uses his barrier magic to check their surroundings. Haruto sees several men camping nearby and realizes they are just regular bandits and knights. It seems strange that such weak men could hurt his father's soldiers so badly. Haruto thinks there might be a spy among them. Knowing he has to act fast, he and Flea fly toward the bandit camp while Char watches them leave. At the bandit camp, the leader is happy about their surprise attack on Haruto's father, but is upset they couldn't get rid of the famous earth-shattering Warhammer for good. Suddenly, the bandits notice Haruto and Flea, and they get ready to fight, but Haruto quickly freezes them in place. When one of the men threatens him, Haruto blasts him into a wall, demanding answers from the others. During the questioning, Haruto learns that the bandits are knights from a nearby kingdom called the Empire, sent to create trouble. This worries him because it means someone powerful is probably targeting his father's land. After asking all the questions he can, Haruto tells Flea to set the whole camp on fire, and she happily agrees to take out everyone there. As they walk through the woods after the attack, Haruto thinks about needing to learn more about the politics in this world. But first, he decides to secretly inform his father about what he has discovered. The next morning, Haruto's father is sitting with Char in his lap, when he hears that the bandits have either been killed or captured. Worried about the Empire's plans, he asks Char who could have defeated all the bandits. Haruto's father thinks it must be someone smart and cold who uses fire magic, realizing it could only be Flay. He decides that Flay probably wasn't responsible and thinks she just happened to find the bandits while hunting. Meanwhile, Char rushes out of her father's room to find Flay, eager to learn the truth about Haruto. She remembers seeing Haruto and Flay leave the castle the night before, but when she checked on her brother, he was asleep in bed, and she couldn't feel his strong mana like usual. Impressed by Char's ability to sense Haruto's mana, Flay admits that Haruto is the strongest being she has ever met, even stronger than herself. However, Flay quickly says she can't reveal Haruto's true identity and encourages Char to be proud to be related to him. That evening, Flay tells Haruto that Char is becoming more curious about who he really is. This makes Haruto start to watch Char closely. One night, as he goes to the bathroom, he thinks it's cute that Char is following him, but when he tries to talk to her, Char gets scared and runs away. Days pass, and Char keeps a close eye on Haruto during training, meal times, and all day. One morning at breakfast, Haruto learns that his mother and Char plan to go to an annual festival. He suggests they take Flay with them, but realizes he hasn't seen Flay in a while. He had sent her to scare off any monsters threatening towns or villages. That evening, as Haruto's mother and Char go to the festival, he returns to his room to relax. He checks on them now and then until he suddenly receives an alert. Meanwhile, Haruto's mother and Char find themselves ambushed by bandits and struggle to escape. The knights with them try to hold back the bandits as much as they can. When some bandits shoot magical projectiles at them, Haruto's mother has to use her mana to create a barrier. Unfortunately, she only blocks most of them and gets hurt by one that gets through. Haruto senses the danger and talks to Char, urging her to lead their mother deep into the forest. With no other choice, Haruto's mother follows Char's instructions, wondering who is helping them escape. They reach a cliff, and Char tells her mother to jump, suggesting she use her magic to cushion their fall. They land in a mossy cave, and Haruto's mother tells Char to stay put, while she looks for help. She believes a hero will come to save them. Worried that her mother might not return, Char starts to cry, but knows finding help is their only option. As Haruto's mother leaves the cave, she realizes that the entrance has been covered by an illusion spell, making her suspicious of who is helping them. Just then, the bandits catch up to her, spotting Haruto's mother, but they know that Char isn't far behind. The bandits realize that if they capture Char, she might be tortured for information. Haruto's mother grabs a dagger, ready to harm herself to protect Char's location from the bandits. Just as she's about to do it, Haru senses the danger and destroys the dagger, catching his mother before she falls. Furious at the bandits for pushing her to this point, Haruto lets out a powerful roar, sending all the bandits flying and knocking them out. Meanwhile, Char waits anxiously in the cave, feeling a familiar strong aura approaching. She realizes her mother is safe and that help is coming. When she steps out cautiously, she's surprised to see Haruto at the cave entrance. He greets her, but Char quickly asks if he's the hero of justice sent to save them. Curiously, he asks where she got that idea. Char explains that their mother said a hero would come, so Haruto must be the one they've been waiting for. He plays along and proudly declares that he's indeed a hero of justice. Then he asks Char to keep his powers a secret, making her thrilled to be trusted with such an important secret. That night, Haruto and his father learn that Char and their mother are being escorted home by Flay, and that all the knights injured in the ambush have miraculously healed. Haruto is curious about who could be behind the attack. His father, wanting to shift the topic, insists they discuss the matter further. Haruto hints that there might be a traitor allowing the bandits into their territory unnoticed. His father thinks about this and realizes someone close might be involved. During the conversation, Haruto hears his father mention a dangerous woman, but before he can ask more, Char, their mother, and Flea burst through the door. Char jumps onto Haruto, surprising everyone. They all wonder how the siblings became so close, and while their parents are happy to see their bond, Flay shows signs of jealousy at how affectionate Char is with her master. Days go by, and Char frequently visits Haruto's room, often skipping knocking. Haruto finds it adorable and prefers her company over her avoiding him. One day, while watching Haruto work, Char asks what he's doing. He explains he's experimenting with some surveillance magic, which he thinks is ancient, since few would recognize the spell. Char casually mentions she saw a spell similar to what Haruto was working on in their home library, which he didn't know existed. Excited, he retrieves several books, and they sit together. As they skim through the pages, they learn that ancient magic has been lost to history, while elemental magic is more common now. Haruto wonders if his barrier magic could be considered ancient, since it's not part of elemental magic. He's thrilled to see Char so eager to learn about ancient spells, and is surprised to hear she has been reading with Flay and their mother's help. Taking advantage of the moment, Char climbs onto Haruto's lap and asks him to read to her. As he shares stories, he explains that gods can travel between worlds, connecting it to the anime he used to watch. Char becomes curious about these ideas, and even though Haruto worries he may have overwhelmed her, he's happy to see her interest grow. Over the next 2 weeks, Haruto works hard to set up a computer and creates his own internet system in this world. He even makes an account for Char to watch anime. She loves the colorful animations, although she struggles with the Japanese language. Haruto enjoys teaching her Japanese and is amazed at how quickly she learns. Another 2 weeks pass, and Char begins exploring the zombie genre in her shows. Haruto starts to think Char might be a genius. However, knowing he needs to limit her screen time, he tells her she can only watch for 3 hours a day. That night during dinner, Char starts to fall asleep at the table. When her mother asks what she has been up to, Char proudly tells her parents she's been learning ancient magic with Haruto. Her mother is excited and encourages both of them to keep it up. After dinner, Char and Haruto take a bath together before saying goodnight. As Haruto tries to sleep, he notices Char has snuggled into bed with him. Their mother watches over them, happy to see her children growing closer. The next morning, the family gathers to see Haruto's father off, as he sets out to investigate the rise in bandit activity in their area. Back in his room, Char looks sad because she doesn't want their father to get hurt. Haruto reassures her that their father is very strong. Suddenly, Char has an idea. With her cute expression, she convinces Haruto to follow their father to keep him safe. Wanting to impress Char, Haruto transforms like the characters in her favorite anime, which amazes her. He warns her to stay put since it could be dangerous, but he gives her a screen to watch the action. As Haruto leaves, he scans the area and spots some bandits hiding in a nearby cave. He quickly sets up a barrier to trap them inside. Then, he heads to the cave where the bandits are. He announces himself as the hero of justice and swiftly knocks out the bandits. Just as he's about to leave, he sees his father and his men arriving. They ask if this masked hero defeated the bandits. Not having picked a name yet, Haruto admits he is the hero of justice. Before his father can thank him for saving his mother and sister, Haruto flies off, feeling exhausted. Back in his room, Haruto decides to keep up this cool persona to impress Char. While still transformed, he works on improving his robot, asking it basic questions. He gets annoyed at its behavior, but notices Char resting in his bed. She seems confused about who the real Haruto is. Their moment is interrupted when they are called to greet some guests. Outside, they see a prince and a princess visiting. The prince is disgusted by Haruto's father's dirty fields. The princess, Marianne, tells him to be quiet and greets them personally. Prince Luce, Marianne's brother, acts bratty and demands Haruto's father bow deeper. Marianne tries to get Luce to be nicer, but he reminds her he is the next ruler and she is just a political tool. Feeling insulted by Luce's attitude, Haruto glares at him but is caught staring. Luce, refusing to let a level 2 adopted child disrespect him, demands a duel against Haruto. They face off with wooden swords. Haruto checks Prince Luce's stats and sees he is level 9 out of a maximum level of 40. Haruto remembers the strongest mage has a maximum level of 77. He also checks his father's and Marianne's stats. His father's max level is 32 and Marianne's is 33. As Luce rushes at him, Haruto evades the prince's attacks. He decides to let Luce hit him a few times to judge his strength, casting a barrier around himself. Haruto allows Luz to land some hits, but when Luz orders him to fight back, Haruto disappears and appears behind Luz, easily knocking him down. Frustrated, Luz tries to fight back, but keeps getting tripped, making Marianne wonder if Haruto is really level 2. Haruto's father admits he doesn't know why Haruto has such exceptional skills. Just then, Prince Luz casts a fireball at Haruto. Haruto quickly creates a barrier in front of him, absorbing all the fireballs fired by Luz. Since Haruto's barriers are invisible, the prince demands to know what's happening and refuses to believe a level 2 like Haruto can use advanced absorption magic. Annoyed by the prince's doubts, Haruto retrieves the absorbed fireballs and unleashes them in a powerful burst, bringing the cocky prince to his knees. Defeated, Luz finally admits his loss. After the duel, Princess Marianne apologizes for her brother's behavior, but Haruto assures her it's fine. Once back in his room, Haruto realizes that both Luz and Marianne know his maximum level is 2. He wonders if his parents, who abandoned him in the forest, had leaked this information. Later that night, Char uses Haruto's surveillance magic and spots some suspicious people in a nearby forest. Just then, Flay interrupts, having heard from Char about Haruto fighting bad guys. She offers to join him on his upcoming journey. Haruto asks about her tasks, and she proudly states that she has finished all the yard work and scared off nearby monsters. As Haruto and Flay prepare to work together, Char imagines all sorts of adventures with them, excited about Flay being Haruto's sidekick. Playing along, Flay declares that she will devote herself to Haruto and fulfill Char's ideas. However, when Haruto asks Flay to drop the act, she scolds him for not considering Char's imagination. When they head out, Haruto instructs Flay to keep the violence to a minimum, especially with Char watching. Meanwhile, the suspicious people boast about their stolen goods and excitedly discuss the food they can buy. Suddenly, Haruto appears from the shadows in his transformed form, introducing himself as the Black Knight. Flay follows closely behind, calling herself the Crimson Knight. Char conjures a flame in her palm and throws a fireball at the men, burning them. Haruto, worried about how violent this is, orders Flay to stop and creates a barrier around the men to protect them. He appears beside Flay and tells her to hold back. She listens and stops attacking while Haruto ties up the men. Afterward, Haruto returns to his room, feeling exhausted. Char, amazed by Haruto and Flay's teamwork, thanks Flay for her help. Flay replies that she couldn't show off all her powers today, but promises to do so next time. While the girls chat, Haruto feels unsure about working with Flay, knowing she can be wild at times. But he notices that Char is happy. Elsewhere, Prince Luz is embarrassed and brooding over his defeat by someone he thinks is a nobody like Haruto. When his attendant calls him, Luz invites him in. The attendant reminds him he needs to prepare for a banquet soon. As Luz dresses, the attendant suggests inviting Char to his farmland tour tomorrow. Luz refuses, but the attendant insists, forcing him to accept. Meanwhile, Haruto's clone serves him high-quality food from the banquet. The clone is frustrated about being forced to socialize, but Haruto reassures him that he will attend the farmland tour tomorrow. Char mentions that Prince Luz invited her to the tour too, which makes Haruto feel uneasy. That night, Haruto prepares for the farmland tour by checking the route. He notices some hooded men gathered around a ritual circle. He quickly heads out, transforms into his hero form, and confronts the men, asking if they have permission from his father, Gold Xenius, to perform a spell there. The hooded men, thinking he's an enemy, prepare to attack, but Haruto reacts quickly, interrupting their spell and blasting them away. One hooded man stays conscious and uses the ritual circle to summon skeleton knights. Feeling creeped out, Haruto equips a sword and destroys the skeletons in one swing. However, just like in the games he played, the skeletons don't die. The hooded men command the skeletons to attack Haruto, but he creates a cubic barrier around himself, sending the skeletons flying. Haruto then spots a red crystal in one skeleton's chest. While the hooded men continue to order their skeletons to attack, they become terrified when the skeletons turn on them. One man summons a golem to destroy the skeletons, but the golem then targets Haruto. The golem swings at Haruto's barrier, sending him crashing into a tree. Realizing he underestimated the golem, Haruto notices the same red crystal in its chest. To gain a better angle, he leaps into the air and conjures a spike, tossing it at the golem's crystal. The crystal absorbs the spike, shutting the golem down temporarily. When the golem wakes up, it turns on the hooded men, leaving them confused. Haruto explains that he meant to shatter the crystal cores of both the skeletons and the golem, but his magic made him their new master instead. He ties up the hooded men using his new skeleton and golem allies. He tries to interrogate their leader, but his threats aren't working. Coming up with a new idea, he makes the leader watch as his men are buried alive. Finally, the leader reveals he is part of the queen's personal summoner unit from a neighboring kingdom. When Haruto asks why they are there, the leader admits they plan to summon creatures to attack Char during the farmland tour. Angry that they are targeting his sister, Haruto demands to know why. The leader explains that the queen fears Char's potential power and worries she could influence politics in her favor in the future. Haruto then realizes that the queen threatening his family is his biological mother. Upset by her intentions, he vows to protect his family and begins plotting how to deal with the queen's schemes. The next morning, Haruto, Char, Luce, and Marianne sit in a carriage. Luce is grumpy, and Char tries to cheer him up by saying he should be proud of losing to Haruto. This only makes Luce angrier, as he demands to know how Haruto was so skilled in their duel. Haruto explains that he can change his physical abilities whenever he wants, surprising both Luce and Marianne. Luce wonders if Haruto might be a returned demon. Char explains that a returned demon is born when a demon has a child with a human, giving them special physical abilities. However, the only difference is that Haruto doesn't have horns or wings. Just then, the carriage stops as they arrive at a huge wheat field just before sunset. While Luce and Marianne watch over Char exploring the field, Haruto asks to speak with his father. They sit down, and Haruto asks what his father would do if Char were attacked. Haruto's father reveals that he received a letter from the mysterious Black Knight last night, warning him that the queen is after Char's life. Sadly, Haruto's father feels helpless because if the queen dies, it could lead to a power struggle among the nobles for the throne. He explains that Haruto's biological father, King Jilk, lost his power long ago. Before Haruto was born, King Jilk and Queen Gilot helped defeat the Demon King, with Gilot personally killing him. She became a hero and earned the title Flash Princess, later marrying King Jilk. They had 3 children, Prince Luce, Princess Marianne, and Haruto. However, there are rumors that Queen Gilot wants to take the kingdom for herself, knowing that Haruto's father is not fit to be king. Haruto's father tells him the only way to defeat Queen Gilot is to have someone stronger than her. He hints that when Char is old enough, she will be the one to take over since she's a genius with more potential than the Flash Princess, Gazelle. Until then, he asks Haruto to protect Char and keep her safe. Later, while Haruto and Flay walk through a field, Flay offers to bring Haruto the queen's head. Haruto declines, saying they must make sure Char grows up safely first. After that, he plans to personally deal with his biological mother, Queen Gilot. Meanwhile, Queen Gilot sits on her throne, angry about reports of the mysterious Black Knight stopping her plans to kill Char. Furious at her servants, she dumps wine on them, thinking that Char might be the only person who could surpass her. She pulls out the holy sword she once used to defeat the Demon King, and wonders if she should hunt down the Black Knight herself. Suddenly, Haruto, disguised as the Black Knight, appears, knocking out her guards with barriers. Gilot demands to know how he got through her defenses, but Haruto just laughs. Relieved that she doesn't have to find him anymore, Gilot quickly casts a water spell, trapping Haruto in a sphere of water to drown him. At first, Gilot enjoys watching Haruto suffer, but then she's shocked when he escapes the water using his own magic. As he floats in the air, Haruto has to block an ice spell from Gazelle and gets hit by a fire spell from Gilot at the same time. He drops to his knees, realizing that Gilot isn't just strong with a sword, she can use water, ice, and fire magic too. Gilot smirks, curious about how strong Haruto really is since he doesn't seem hurt. When Haruto raises his hand, a beam of light shoots toward Gilot, surprising her because she didn't hear him cast any spell. She barely blocks it and watches in awe as Haruto says he's getting serious. Gilot instinctively puts up barriers to block hundreds of projectiles that Haruto sends her way. As she watches him cast so many attacks with ease, Gilot realizes Haruto's magic might be even stronger than the Demon King's. Gazella fought hard, knowing that keeping her barrier up used a lot of mana. She dropped her barriers temporarily and charged at Haruto with her holy sword. Haruto predicted her move and easily dodged her attacks. They exchanged blows until Gazella jumped on Haruto, declaring herself the strongest in the world. After gauging her strength, Haruto managed to slash and disarm her, putting a collar on her as punishment. He warned her that if she tried to remove the collar, it would decapitate her. Haruto made it clear she was not to go near the Zeni family again, or he wouldn't hold back next time. After leaving, Gazella realized she was now under someone else's control and laughed maniacally, knowing she was no longer the strongest. 5 years passed, and Haruto watched as Flay and Char played in the snow. He thought about how peaceful the last 5 years had been, with no signs of Queen Gilot plotting against his family. As he watched Flay build a huge snow castle, he wondered if she was cold in her maid outfit. Despite shivering, Flay proudly declared she would wear it forever since it was the first gift Haruto gave her. Ignoring Flay, Haruto decided to make her some warm clothes, encouraging her to tell him if she was uncomfortable. Suddenly, Char excitedly suggested a special attack for Haruto to use in the snow. Reluctantly, Haruto listened and stepped away from them, announcing a new spell. With the incantation Haruto Do, he conjured a mini tornado in his palm and fired it into the snow. The tornado created a massive crater, impressing Flay and Char. Char jumped into Haruto's arms, thrilled to have such an amazing brother. Haruto thought that embarrassing himself in front of Char wasn't so bad after all. Just then, Haruto's parents arrived, curious about the giant crater. To cover his tracks, Haruto created a clone of the Black Knight and blamed it for the destruction, successfully hiding his true power from his parents. While Flay, Char, and Haruto's mother began building snow sculptures, Haruto chatted with his father. He learned that his father hadn't heard anything about Queen Gilot's plans. There were even rumors that Queen Gilot had been enslaved and seen wearing a slave collar. As his father wondered who could have enslaved the once mighty Flash Queen, Haruto quietly sneaked away, thinking his job of keeping Char safe was mostly done. However, before he could leave, his father told him that he would be joining the Royal Capital School in the coming weeks. Haruto apologized to his father, feeling frustrated about the complicated situation forcing him to enroll. He wished to live the quiet life he had always wanted. Back in his father's office, Haruto tried to talk his way out of going to school, but his father showed him a personal invitation letter from King Jill, suggesting he enroll. Haruto's father suspected that Princess Marianne had influenced the king since she seemed to like Haruto. Plus, Prince Luce would skip grades to join Haruto's class, meaning they would have to spend time together. Haruto's father warned him to be careful, because he thought Queen Gilot was secretly using Princess Marianne to carry out her plans. He asked Haruto to investigate. Thinking about all the sacrifices his father made for him, Haruto agreed to attend school to make him proud. Before he left, his father reminded him to take an attendant for help while living on campus. Knowing he shouldn't bring Flay, Haruto was stuck on who to choose as his attendant. Overhearing their conversation, Haruto's mother offered to help him find an attendant, but he had to decline. Back in his room, Haruto chatted with his robot clones about ways to get expelled from school. Since his robot clone couldn't use magic, Haruto suggested it could impersonate him and get kicked out on purpose. However, the clone protested, saying it wouldn't stand a chance against magical students. As a compromise, Haruto promised to create a magic barrier around his clone to protect it while it impersonated him at school. A few days later, Haruto spent time in a log hut he secretly built, hoping for a quiet life after finishing his duties. Suddenly, Flea and Char arrived. Char was wearing a magical girl outfit from an anime she had been watching. She mentioned that she got in trouble for clinging to Haruto too much. Haruto suggested sneaking her in and out of his room using teleportation magic. He first practiced with objects, and Flay and Char were amazed when he successfully created 2 portals to simulate teleportation. However, Haruto admitted he had never tried teleporting living things before. Flay suggested using his clone, so Haruto created a portal to his clone, who was relaxing in his room. When Haruto ordered the clone to try the portal, it refused. Flay got angry at the clone for refusing her master and jumped through the portal, tossing the clone in after her. With that, Haruto confirmed he could now teleport both living and non-living objects. However, he still needed to find an attendant for school. While Flay cleaned the hut's windows, Char watched some anime, and Haruto played video games. Suddenly, he blurted out that he needed to find an attendant for school. Hearing this, Flay and Char became curious. But Haruto didn't want to tell them he was looking for someone to help him at school. As he walked along a riverbank, he reminded himself that he needed to keep his search a secret from the girls, since he only had 3 months to find an attendant. Suddenly, Haruto heard something in the nearby forest. He followed a path and spotted his skeleton summons building homes. When the skeletons saw their master, they rushed to greet him, making Haruto reminisce. After he had stolen them from the hooded men who summoned them, the skeletons never disappeared. Haruto decided to give them some land, and they had been settling down ever since. Surprised by how efficient and happy the skeletons were, Haruto learned that he named the leader of the skeleton army Johnny. As he looked around, he noticed other monsters living among the skeletons. They had been scared off by Flay and had nowhere to go, so the skeletons offered them homes. Johnny reassured Haruto that the monsters followed the rules, just like everyone else. Since Haruto was there, Johnny offered to show him how much they had expanded their land. He took Haruto to their crop field and explained that they didn't steal vegetables. Instead, they grew them themselves. Proud of their work, Haruto realized that the skeletons didn't need to eat and were growing crops for the monsters living with them. Johnny then took Haruto to see their cattle and other produce. Haruto found Johnny's voice soothing, but noted that he could be a bit of a chatterbox. Johnny asked Haruto for advice on their progress with the land, and Haruto encouraged him to keep up the good work before leaving. With the sun beginning to set, Haruto sat by the riverbank, feeling that he had wasted the whole day with little progress. Just then, he heard some large thumps in the ground, and remembered he also had a golem summon, which he had named Gian. Sitting next to Haruto, Gian shyly handed him a flower while blushing and twiddling its fingers. Curious, Haruto asked if Gian didn't like being around the other creatures. Gian suddenly confessed its love for Haruto, thanking him for the lovely words. Haruto appreciated Gian's affection, but began to head back to the hut, wondering why he had such bad luck. Upon entering the hut, Flay was waiting for Haruto, and immediately questioned him about the attendant he was searching for. Knowing he could lie to Flay, he simply said it didn't concern her, and quickly walked off. The next morning, Haruto was enjoying his video games when Char approached him, wanting to talk. She revealed that she had been thinking of alternative names for Haruto's masked persona. Meanwhile, at the skeleton village, Char was amazed to see all the friendly skeletons and suggested naming the village Pandemonium Village, which the skeletons happily accepted. In a snowy area, a group of men discovered a hibernating dragon. Excited about finding the blizzard dragon, they knew that parts of it could sell for a lot of gold. They readied their weapons, but suddenly the dragon took off. The men shot arrows at it, causing the dragon to spiral down and crash into a river, helplessly swept away by the strong water and snow. Meanwhile, Haruto was with Flay and his father, discussing a mysterious blue dragon spotted at the edge of his father's territory. Haruto thought it wasn't their problem since the dragon was far away, but his father explained that dragons were powerful creatures and could cause destruction if left alone. Haruto asked Flay to try to communicate with the blue dragon, but she said she had never heard of a blue dragon, meaning it likely hadn't been born recently. She mentioned that during the Demon vs. Human wars, she never encountered one, so she assumed the blue dragon was hiding and didn't want to talk. As Haruto left his father's office, he spotted Char eavesdropping on their conversation. Char then pleaded with Flay to rescue the blue dragon. Unable to resist Char's charm, Haruto and Flay agreed to visit the dragon. Once transformed, they headed into the snowy mountains and tracked down the blue dragon, noticing how beaten up it looked. At the same time, Flay spotted several hunters searching for the dragon. Prompted by Char, Haruto and Flay quickly set out. They arrived at the resting blue dragon just as it woke up, startled by the hunters rushing toward it. Before the hunters could harm the dragon, Haruto and Flay stepped in to confront them. While Haruto focused on healing the blue dragon, Flay unleashed her flames, quickly knocking out all the hunters. Once healed, the blue dragon moved closer to Haruto, but suddenly released a breath of ice, encasing him in ice. Annoyed, Haruto told the dragon to be grateful for the healing. To his surprise, he realized he could now hear the dragon's voice. Curious, he asked how the dragon ended up there, but the dragon interrupted, wondering why such a powerful demon like Flay served a human. Taking the chance to teach the dragon, Flay spent an hour explaining Haruto's amazing feats, telling it he was considered the reincarnation of the Demon King. Impressed, the dragon apologized for not participating in the demon war. Haruto noted that dragons are seen as demons in this world. The blue dragon revealed it had spent the last 300 years alone in a cave, sleeping. One day, an adventurer came and left behind a book that fascinated the dragon. Seeking more knowledge, the dragon transformed into a human and went to a nearby town to steal books, then returned to its cave to read. Unfortunately, its cave was discovered, and all the books it had collected were burned, forcing the dragon to hide from hunters. After hearing the dragon's sad story, Flay accepted its apology and welcomed it as an ally. The blue dragon offered to serve under Haruto, forming a pact and transforming into a human. Haruto crafted a maid outfit for the blue dragon and introduced it as Liza. Seeing Liza and Haruto getting close, Flay felt jealous and reminded Liza that she was Haruto's first servant. But before she could finish, Haruto and Liza flew off, prompting Flay to run underneath them, not wanting to lose her master to another servant. Back home, Haruto introduced Liza to his parents and Char, asking if she could work for them as a maid. Happy to see the blizzard dragon as an adorable girl, Haruto's mother and Char welcomed Liza warmly. Char even offered to be her friend, which flustered Liza. Considering the situation, Haruto's father was shocked that such a powerful dragon was now a little girl. However, he agreed to let Liza live with them as long as she followed the rules. Taking Liza outside, Flay began her maid training, warning her to take the duties seriously if she wanted to stay by Haruto's side. She showed off her skills and told Liza she would test her by asking her to clean outside first. Surprisingly, Liza finished quickly, making Flay a little worried. Next, they moved on to washing dishes, competing to see who could clean the most. By the end, Flay accidentally broke all her dishes, while Liza successfully cleaned hers. Then Flay decided to test Liza's cooking skills. She tried to make her own dish, but accidentally burned it. Liza, on the other hand, whipped up a delicious stew that impressed everyone. Flay was feeling down and served her own meals to the family. Haruto's mother and father were impressed with Liza's dishes, while Flay sat in a corner, looking sad. Noticing a stain on Char's face, Liza quickly helped clean it up. Haruto's mother then commented on how quickly Liza was learning. Curious about Liza's other skills, she asked if Liza had any more talents. After thinking for a moment, Liza mentioned that she had read a few magic books, so she knew some magic. When Haruto's mother heard this, she officially assigned Liza as Char's personal maid, which Liza happily accepted. The next morning, Liza took her new roles seriously. She woke Char up and took her to train. Liza conjured a water spell and showed Char how to create her own fireball. Throughout the day, Liza stayed by Char's side, helping her study. A few days later, Char called Haruto to show off her amazing progress. She could now create a huge fireball. When Haruto turned to Liza, he saw her casting a water spell to wash clothes while teaching Char. This surprised Haruto because Liza was so efficient. He asked if she was tired from her new routine, but Liza replied that she felt calm doing chores and spending time with Char. Worried she might be a burden, Char asked Liza to be honest about her feelings. Char then suggested that Liza could be more than just her maid. They could also be friends. Haruto thought this was a great idea, and Liza happily accepted, exciting Char. As Haruto watched their friendship grow, he realized Liza might be the attendant he needed for school. However, he didn't want to separate them, since Char and Liza had become so close. Before leaving, Haruto thought about using his teleportation magic so Liza could travel back and forth, keeping her close to both him and Char. Later, in the log hut, Char looked sad because the show she had been watching just ended. Haruto reassured her that a new show would come out soon, which would help with her boredom. After her break, Liza and Char went back to training. Just before Char left, Haruto told her he would be starting school next week at the kingdom. Shocked, Char sneaked off to hold a meeting with her knights. She thanked Liza, Flea, Johnny, and Jian for coming to her secret meeting. Getting straight to business, Char revealed that she heard Haruto would be going to school soon. This surprised Flea because she hadn't heard anything about it from Haruto. Since Haruto was already powerful, Flea wondered what the reincarnated Demon King needed to learn from humans. Hearing Haruto called the Demon King made Char curious, but Flea realized she shouldn't have said that. Char felt sad that Haruto was keeping secrets from her. Seeing Char's sad face, Johnny spoke up, saying that Haruto valued her and would eventually tell her everything. Hearing this made Char flustered. It was nice to know she was important to her brother. She then continued the meeting and asked for ideas about why Haruto would willingly go to school. Char remembered a time when she watched an anime set in a high school and asked Haruto what it was like. When she glanced at him, she saw his face darken, as if he was afraid to talk about it. The others were surprised that Haruto could be scared of anything, but Char shared her theories about what might scare him at school. She convinced them that the student council might be corrupt, making the school sound like a scary place. Then Char announced that she and Liza would go to the school to gather information while Johnny and John stayed behind to prepare. They all agreed to keep their plans a secret to protect Haruto. That night, Liza updated Haruto on everything that happened in the meeting, and he was grateful. If Char and the others had acted up, it could have gone badly. Liza then asked Haruto if he was truly facing evil forces at school. Haruto decided to play along to keep Liza's imagination alive, saying he did have a greater enemy at school. He then asked Liza to be his attendant, which she gladly accepted. The next morning, Flea and the maids in the mansion talked about their lives. The maids shared their worries about their significant others. Flea suggested that they should just cut ties with them since the maids were too attached. Later that day, Char asked Flea about her maid outfit and learned that Flea had to get her uniform custom-made to fit her larger chest. Char saw Liza flying around and asked Flea if she could teach her how to fly. Flea showed off her flight spell, but when Haruto's mother found out Char wanted to learn such a dangerous spell, she forbade Char from practicing flight magic since she was still too young. Back at the hut, Liza asked Haruto to explain his teleportation magic. She was curious about what kind of magic was needed for such an advanced spell. As Haruto began to explain teleportation, Liza realized she couldn't sense any mana being used when Haruto cast the spell. This meant Haruto's teleportation didn't follow the rules of their world, where spells usually needed mana. Later, it was bath time. Char and Liza enjoyed a hot spa that Haruto had built for them. They teased Flea, who was afraid of the hot water. After some convincing, Flea jumped in and instantly loved the warm, steamy water. That night, Haruto checked the girls' mana levels using a magic orb. Flea had a level of 40 out of a maximum of 77, and Liza had a level of 36 out of a maximum of 71. When he checked Char, he was amazed to see that this human child had reached level 17 with a maximum of 61. He noted that the Flash Queen Gisette had a maximum level of only 44, so with some extra training, Char could easily surpass both Flea and Liza. Char then revealed that when she was born, she could create fireballs, which led to her mother sealing her powers. Curious about Haruto's level, the girls asked him, thinking he was over level 100. However, Haruto refused to reveal his level, and the magic orb showed his maximum level as just 2. The big day finally arrived, and Haruto's family gathered to see him off. They checked to see if he and Liza were ready. Haruto mentioned that he had asked Liza, who was still nervous about hiding her horns and tail. Just then, Flea expressed her sadness about not being by Haruto's side, but Char was more focused on telling him to have fun at school. Meanwhile, Prince Luce was still bickering with his sister, Princess Marianne. She barged into his room to show off a letter, but Luz brushed it off, saying it was just a note telling them Haruto had left home. Marianne reminded him that he had recommended Haruto for the Royal Academy. Flustered, Luz dismissed his obsession with Haruto, saying he just needed someone equal to help him grow stronger. Yet, he couldn't hide his excitement about showing off his new skills to Haruto, pleased that losing to Haruto had made him a better person. Luz quickly fired back, stating that he knew Marianne had also recommended Haruto, and even asked their father for a favor. This made Marianne yell that she wasn't in love with Haruto, which surprised Luz because he didn't actually think that. Changing the subject, Luz asked about a new cult at Marianne's school. Marianne explained that a group called the Church of Lucifer was believed to have infiltrated the school. Rumors said the members worship an ancient demon, and their influence was spreading across the kingdom. Some nobles, including their mother, the Flash Princess Gilot, had joined the cult and were funding its schemes. Luz was frustrated, wondering why his mother would side with a cult. He speculated that a caller she got 5 years ago might have changed her attitude. He admitted he was scared of his mother. Luz pointed out that everyone knew their parents were on bad terms, and that the church was trying to use this trouble to their advantage. He jokingly wondered if their mother was trying to overthrow their father. Marianne suggested a wild idea, saying she believed Haruto could solve all this political conflict. Talking about Haruto, Luz mentioned the urban legend of the Black Knight, who was said to serve Haruto's family and could even defeat a dragon. Just then, their mother, Queen Gilot, entered and asked what her children were discussing. Marianne greeted her excitedly, but before she could finish, Gilot grabbed her by the throat, lifting her into the air and demanding she not mock her. Luz called out for his mother to stop, and she eventually released Marianne, brushing off her anger as a little joke. Turning to Luz, Gilot revealed she had been eavesdropping on their conversation and urged him to get close to Haruto to learn more about the mysterious Black Knight. When Luz hesitated, Gilot glared at him, forcing him to promise he would find out more about the Black Knight. As she left, Luz wondered if he had dragged Haruto into his family's messy problems and apologized to him. Meanwhile, Haruto decided to head back to his wooden hut instead of going straight to the capital. Haruto planned to use his teleportation magic when school started, but until then, he wanted to relax in his hut. Flea begged to join him, but Char said she would take care of Flay instead. When Haruto left for the capital using his teleportation magic, he and Liza appeared in a nearby forest to keep his powers hidden. Suddenly, they saw a runaway bison chasing a carriage. Haruto quickly changed and rushed to save the carriage. Just before he could reach it, one of the wheels broke, causing the carriage to swerve and throw a child out. Luckily, a silver-haired woman caught the child and urged the other passengers to escape while she distracted the bison. Haruto watched as the woman bravely faced the charging bison but got thrown around. Concerned for her, he stepped in and knocked out the bison. Seeing the woman injured, Haruto healed her, shocking her since she didn't sense any mana from his magic. The child then ran up to thank Haruto, and while he repaired the carriage, the silver-haired woman wanted to repay him. Haruto said defeating the bison was no trouble, but she insisted she hoped to meet him again to repay him later. After taking care of the unconscious bison, Liza and Haruto fed it and sent it back into the forest. Finally arriving at Haruto's school, Liza felt a strange familiarity with the silver-haired woman. At school, Haruto noticed a long line of tired students waiting. After dealing with paperwork, he found his room and realized Liza had her own room too. Feeling drained from socializing, Haruto suggested they go back to the wooden hut to relax. When they used teleportation magic to return, Flay and Char were waiting for them, excited to hear about Haruto's experiences in the capital. As Haruto collapsed on the couch, clearly tired, Char asked if they could eat at a restaurant. However, Flay interrupted, saying she would cook for her master. Char whispered something to Flay, which made her change her mind, and Flay agreed to eat out in the capital. Using his barrier magic, Haruto helped Flay cast an invisibility spell to hide her ears and tail. The group then teleported back to the capital and settled down for a delicious meal. After eating, Char pulled out a map and assigned tasks. Flay would survey the south, Lisa would explore the west, and Char and Haruto would investigate the east. Char had a map and assigned roles to everyone because, even though they were having fun, they needed to get used to their new surroundings. After splitting up, Char turned to Haruto and excitedly revealed that she planned a special date for them. Haruto knew this would be an important memory for his little sister, so he happily accepted. They visited various stores, tried different food stands, and even bought a necklace for Char. As the sun began to set, Haruto chased after Char when she accidentally bumped into someone. When he caught up, he realized it was the same silver-haired woman from earlier. She sensed a huge amount of mana from Haruto, which made him nervous. Not wanting to be discovered, he quickly said he only had a level 2 mana. The woman apologized and hurried off, saying she was late for a job interview. Char mentioned that the woman felt familiar, making Haruto wonder if Lisa and Char sensed something about her that he couldn't. Later, in his new dorm room, Haruto talked to his clone, who had been pretending to be him. He learned that the school required an exam to assess student skills. Haruto, who thought he was exempt, got an idea. He wondered if he could get expelled if he did poorly on the exam. To avoid socializing, he sneakily made his way to the exam room. However, he got scared when a teacher named Professor Pokos called out to him. They headed into a huge classroom, and Haruto already felt drained at the thought of being around so many people, making him nervous about failing the exam. When the exam papers were handed out, he looked through them. Haruto intentionally put down wrong answers, but when he got to the barrier section, he decided he should at least answer some questions correctly. He quickly flew through those questions. Flipping to the last pages, he saw questions about ancient magic and remembered he had studied it at home. He recalled a famous author who wrote amazing books on the topic, so he ended up writing a lot for that section. After Professor Pokos collected the papers, she said they would assess Haruto's mana capacity next. As Haruto entered a different room, he felt embarrassed about how everyone would react to his low mana level. Inside, he heard a voice, but couldn't see anyone at first. When he looked down, he saw a shorter teacher speaking to him. She looked Haruto up and down and complimented his looks. She introduced herself as Tieta and said she specialized in ancient magic. However, she quickly scolded Haruto for looking down on her small stature and warned him that she would send him home if he continued. This made Haruto a bit excited, because getting expelled might be easier than he thought. Seeing Haruto so happy, Tieta accused him of having dirty thoughts about her, but admitted she didn't mind. Then she got serious as she reviewed Haruto's recent exam answers. She set up a crystal ball and instructed him to hover his hand over it and inject as much mana as he could. Suddenly, the crystal ball burst because it couldn't hold all of Haruto's magic. He hoped this would get him expelled for destroying school property, but Tieta and Professor Pokos realized the crystal ball was a rare stone and that Haruto's mana had exceeded its capacity. Tieta noted that Haruto's answers in the barrier section were perfect, and his responses about ancient magic were nearly identical to what she would have written. Haruto realized that the books he read at home were written by Tieta. She had planned this secret assessment to recruit him as her disciple, knowing he didn't need to take the exams. However, Haruto refused to join Tieta's research and returned to his dorm room to tell his clone what happened. They agreed to keep working hard and hoped to get expelled so they could return to a peaceful life. Finally, the opening ceremony arrived. Char handed Haruto's clone a gun for protection, and the clone shared all of Haruto's memories but had no magical abilities. After sitting through the ceremony, Haruto dashed back to his room. On his way, he spotted a group of students trying to sneak by to avoid attention. Suddenly, one of the outgoing students called out to a girl in front of Haruto, who turned out to be the same silver-haired girl he had bumped into before. The outgoing student revealed himself as Vice President Schneide and demanded that the silver-haired girl and Haruto salute him. Not wanting to get involved, Haruto lied about having stomach problems to excuse himself, but Schneide got offended and began to chant a fire spell. Haruto tried to dodge the fire spell from Schneide, but ended up getting hit from behind. To everyone's surprise, Haruto stood up unharmed. His barrier magic had worked. Trying to play it cool, Haruto's clone accidentally taunted Schneide. The silver-haired girl noticed and asked if Haruto's clone was okay. Ignoring them, Schneide started casting a stronger fire spell. In response, Haruto pulled out his gun and fired a shot that intercepted Schneide's spell, creating a huge burst of light. This distraction gave Haruto time to escape and return to his room, feeling beaten up. He apologized to his clone and suggested it take a break, thinking about how strange the school was. That evening, a messenger delivered a letter to Haruto, which he tried to refuse. However, he found out it was a duel challenge from Schneide, with their family names at stake. The messenger warned Haruto to take the duel seriously to avoid embarrassing his family. Meanwhile, the silver-haired girl watched from a distance. Back in his room, Haruto brainstormed ways to intentionally lose the duel while still putting up a good fight. Suddenly, he saw the silver-haired girl getting into the same carriage as the messenger for Schneide. That night, she met with Schneide and apologized, taking all the blame for his injury. In a fit of anger, Schneide threw his drink at a student trying to heal him and demanded the duel be retracted, but only if the silver-haired girl would undress and dance. Swallowing her pride, the silver-haired girl began to undress, causing excitement among Schneide and his friends. Just then, Haruto intervened, having transformed. He scolded the silver-haired girl for embarrassing herself and told her to go home, saying he would handle this. Turning to Schneide, Haruto introduced himself as Shiva, the Black Knight, and declared they were in his special domain where no one could save him. When Schneide tried to attack, Haruto simply cast a cursed barrier, bringing Schneide to his knees. He listed Schneide's wrongdoings, including abusing his authority, challenging underclassmen to duels, and sexually harassing girls. Haruto explained that the curse he placed on Schneide would stop him from using magic, and any attempt to remove it would hurt him. As a warning, Haruto told Schneide to cancel the duel before disappearing back to his room. Schneide's friends tried to lift the spell, but they only ended up hurting him more. The next day, many professors surrounded him, eager to meet the boy who defeated the arrogant Vice President Schneide. Haruto felt hopeful when he was called to the professor's office, thinking he might get expelled. As he rushed back to his room, other students recognized him as the rookie who took down Schneide. To avoid more attention, he continued to his room but was stopped by Tieta, who grabbed him and urged him to reconsider joining her research lab. When Haruto tried to leave, Tieta wouldn't let him and suggested they talk. She explained that there were two options for students at the academy. 1. Knights course, combat training to become soldiers, or knights for the kingdom. 2. Researchers course, focuses on researching and developing new magic. Since Haruto knew a lot about ancient magic, Tieta wanted him to join her research team. While she tried to get him to sign a membership form, a student called his name and lunged at him, trying to punch. Haruto quickly pinned the attacker down, realizing it was Luce, who was with Marianne. After greeting them, Haruto noticed Luce had gotten stronger. They asked Haruto if he had chosen a course yet. Marianne offered him a spot in her research lab, but Luce insisted that Haruto should join him instead. Tieta jumped in, claiming she wanted to work with Haruto too. Luce recognized Tieta's name and warned Haruto that she was known for studying magic that had no real use and had a short temper. Tieta confirmed this angrily, saying her research was for those who were knowledgeable about ancient magic. As Haruto, Tieta, and Luce argued over who would work with him, the silver-haired girl interrupted and asked to speak with Haruto alone. He took the chance to leave with her, and once they were away from others, he apologized for getting her involved. She assured him it was fine and apologized for bringing him into the situation with Schneide. The girl had some questions for Haruto. She asked if the Haruto who defeated Schneide yesterday was the same as the one standing in front of her now. To keep their conversation private, Haruto created a barrier around them. She noticed the barrier and mentioned she could sense it, which impressed Haruto. When he asked what felt different about him today, she said his aura was completely different. Haruto realized she could sense mana. Curious, he wondered if she might be a demon like Flay, but the girl was offended, thinking it was an insult. Haruto dropped the barrier and asked her to keep quiet about his clone. Before he left, the girl asked to be his friend. Haruto felt a connection with her, but was unsure how to respond. She shared her story, saying she was abandoned as a child and grew up in a nearby church, but never had a friend. Hearing this, Haruto admitted he had never had a friend his age either, and thought this was a great opportunity for both of them. He asked if she had chosen a course, feeling disappointed when she said she was convinced to join Tieda's lab. However, he thought that if it meant spending time with her, he'd join too. The girl smiled brightly, and Haruto struggled to hide his feelings, admitting she was beautiful. They exchanged introductions, and Haruto shared a bit about himself. Meanwhile, Char, Lisa, and Flay were relaxing in a hot spring, feeling sad that they had less time with Haruto since he started school. Char decided to visit him while Lisa and Flay talked about their new lives serving under him. Flay revealed that she had served the former Demon King before serving Haruto. Liza was curious about the former Demon King and asked what he was like. Flea described him as humble, valuing all demons and monsters, and hoping for humans and demons to coexist. She wondered if he lost to the Flash Queen on purpose to reincarnate as a human. Faye suggested the former Demon King wanted to make things better from the human side, but was happy to meet Haruto, whom she believed to be the reincarnated Demon King. When Liza asked for the former Demon King's name, Flay replied, his name was Iris Philia. Haruto and the silver-haired girl, who introduced herself as Iris Philia, joked about her long name. Haruto decided to call her Iris, which made her happy because it was a nickname from her first human friend. Iris offered to help Haruto sign up for his classes, and he reluctantly agreed. He took Iris back to his dorm room, worried it might seem strange for anyone to see them together. When they entered the room, they found Char waiting for Haruto. Char was shocked to see he had brought a girl home. Before Char could jump to conclusions, Haruto quickly clarified that Iris was just a friend. Char, however, believed it wouldn't be long before girls started surrounding Haruto. She joked that she'd be one of his wives, but Haruto thought she might dislike him as she got older. For now, he let Char cling to him while she still liked him and introduced her to Iris. The three sat down, and Iris and Haruto began filling out forms for their classes. Since Haruto wasn't interested in his classes, he rolled a dice to choose them randomly. Char, however, believed Haruto was skilled enough to succeed in any class, and filled out the paperwork he was too lazy to do. Iris was surprised that Haruto let someone else pick his classes. She asked if he had any goals in life, but Char interrupted, saying Haruto was already superior to all the students at the academy and wanted to know how capable he really was. Feeling too hyped up, Haruto asked Char why she was here when she could just spend time with him. Iris asked Haruto to open the teleportation gate, but before he did, he covered her eyes so she wouldn't see his special spell. After deciding on their classes, Haruto secretly wondered how he would get himself expelled. A few days later, Haruto and Char woke up after sharing a bed in their wooden hut. Haruto felt sad because the first day of classes had finally arrived. Haruto asks Char to summarize what he needs to remember for his upcoming classes while she hands him his schedule. Char tells him that, based on his entrance exam results, he's placed in Class C, which is average for his group. She reassures him that his ranking can change with each exam. But Haruto doesn't care about his ranking. As he looks over the classes Char picked for him, he realizes they are quite difficult. Char thinks her big brother needs a challenge. Haruto worries that if he tries to do poorly in these advanced classes, he might get expelled, so he thanks Char for her help. Before he leaves for school, he gives his little sister a tight hug and notices how strong her squeeze is. After teleporting to his dorm, Haruto sees Iris waiting for him. He introduces her to Liza, who is impressed by Liza's power and officially greets her as Haruto's friend. As they walk to class, Iris is surprised to learn that Haruto is in Class C, while she is in Class A. She wishes him luck in his classes as Lisa and Haruto watch her enter her classroom. Liza then asks Haruto if Iris is a demon or a human, but Haruto isn't sure. What matters to him is that Iris seems friendly, so they decide not to pry into her life. Once in his classroom, Haruto immediately feels the attention of the professor and other students. They all recognize him for defeating Schneide, which has made him quite popular. The professor explains that Class C is ranked in the middle among 5 classes, A, B, C, D, and E. He mentions that students can easily move up or down in ranks, and that there will be an exam to assess their progress. Haruto gets excited about the exam because he thinks he can intentionally fail. However, when he sees the exam questions, he's disappointed to find they are very easy. Almost anyone, even Char, could answer them. He wonders if the professor designed the questions to gauge the students' attitudes. Haruto decides to aim for 60% correct answers, purposely getting the rest wrong. When the professor collects the papers, he announces that the class average is only 20%. He is disappointed since Class B students should easily score around 50 out of 100. Despite this, he congratulates Haruto for scoring 60, making him the highest in the class. The class applauds, but Haruto feels he overthought the exam's purpose. He realizes that using Char as a reference isn't ideal since she is a genius, making everyone else seem less capable. After class, the professor announces that he will recommend Haruto for promotion to Class A, which makes Haruto even more disappointed with his actions. Heading to his next class, he sees Luz and Iris trying to leave, but they spot him and force him to sit between them. Luz insists that Iris leave him alone with Haruto, but Iris retorts, making Haruto feel uncomfortable. Suddenly, the professor introduces herself as Oratoria Belcom, an expert in elemental theory. She notices that Luz, Iris, and Haruto are being loud and scolds them for disrupting her advanced class, reminding them that they are just first-year students. Professor Oratoria recognizes Haruto and Iris as students recruited by Tieta for her ancient magic research, and she mentions that she'll be watching them closely. Haruto wonders how Oratoria and Tieta know each other. As the lesson begins, Professor Oratoria talks about main elements, sub-elements, and quantification. She asks Iris to come to the front and place her hand over a crystal ball. Everyone is surprised to see that Iris has all elemental affinities, but her level is only 5 out of a maximum of 35. Oratoria invites Iris to join her research instead of Tieta's, but Iris coldly declines and returns to her seat. Using Iris as an example, Professor Oratoria explains that everyone who can wield elemental magic has a main element and sub-elements. For Iris, her main element is chaos. Oratoria shares that there is ongoing research to quantify users' mastery of their sub-elements and main elements. Haruto is impressed by Iris's abilities as an all-rounder. Moving on, Professor Oratoria presents a scenario about a user with a fire sub-element casting a muscle enhancement spell. She asks why, in some cases, the muscle enhancement spell works better than other fire spells. Luz suggests that casting a spell multiple times makes it stronger, but Oratoria disagrees, citing previous research. Listening quietly, Haruto mutters that there must be hidden properties for each elemental affinity. This catches Professor Oratoria's attention, and she demands to know what he said. Haruto explains that if the fire element has a hidden property of enhancement, it would make the muscle enhancement spell more effective than other fire spells. Professor Oratoria is surprised to hear a student mention this idea. She reveals that someone has been sending the school papers about hidden properties, which haven't been made public, not even to royals. She is amazed that Haruto came up with the idea all by himself. Professor Oratoria asks Haruto to join her research, but he declines. As he thinks about who might know about hidden properties, the only person that comes to mind is his little sister, Char. Haruto, Iris, and Haruto's clone then head to Tieta's research club, where they learn that Tieta and Professor Pulas are throwing a party to recruit new members. Suddenly, Haruto and Iris spot Schneide, who is looking for Tieta's help to remove the curse Haruto put on him earlier. Tieta examines the curse and determines it's a type of invisible barrier magic that causes pain when magic is injected into it. She figures out that the curse has lasted more than a day and isn't elemental magic. It's a form of ancient magic. Tieta gets excited and suspects that the user must be at least level 80. She demands Schneide tell them everything he knows about the person who cursed him. At first, Schneide hesitates, but eventually admits it was a masked man dressed in black. This gives Tieta an idea about the culprit. She mentions the legend of the Black Knight, who guards his father's domain. From Schneide's description, it seems the Black Knight is at their school. Suddenly, Haruto transforms and introduces himself as Shiva the Black Knight. He tells Schneide that he will remove the curse if Schneide calls off their duel. Forced to agree, Schneide complies. Before Haruto can leave, Tieta binds him with magic, but he easily breaks free, shocking her. She realizes Haruto has returned the favor by binding her in place. However, she soon needs to use the bathroom, so she agrees to stop looking into the Black Knight, allowing Haruto to leave. After moving to a new location, Haruto, Iris, Tieta, and Pulis officially start their welcome party. Haruto notices Pulis looking at him, so he asks her what's wrong. Professor Pulis admits she feels a connection with Haruto because they both get dragged into situations. When Haruto asks for more details, he learns that Professor Pulis used to be Tieta's teacher. Even when she was young, Tieta was incredibly smart and grasped concepts that Pulis struggled with. When Tieta enrolled as a student, Pulis was assigned as her attendant. She watched Tieta develop various spells and become recognized as a saint. Pulis expresses her frustration, saying Tieta would have had an easier life if she hadn't started researching ancient magic. Just then, Iris, who is clearly drunk, runs over to Haruto and starts flirting with him. Before she can do anything else, she falls asleep on Haruto's lap. While Iris is sleeping, Haruto chats with Tieta, who reveals that during Iris's mana assessment in the entrance exam, it was found that she has all elemental affinities. Tieta suspects Iris joined the Ancient Research Club to help raise her unusually low level of 5, considering the maximum level is 35. Meanwhile, Schneide is furious about being forced to call off the duel with Haruto. He doesn't want to be seen as a coward, so he hires a group of assassins and orders them to kill Haruto and everyone in the Ancient Magic Research Club. The assassins confirm Haruto's location and see that the 3 girls are drunk and Haruto is asleep. They start casting soundproofing and intruder detection spells around the building to sneak inside. Suddenly, one assassin bumps into an invisible barrier surrounding the entire building. As they try to cut a hole in the barrier, a door appears. One assassin warns the others that Shiva the Black Knight protects Haruto. When one of the assassins opens the door, they are suddenly pulled inside, causing the others to fire projectiles at the door. However, their spells are swallowed by an abyss. With all the assassins on high alert, they see hundreds of doors appearing around them, each with a version of Shiva emerging. They begin to freeze one by one. The last moving assassin fires a spell at the Shivas, but Haruto reveals himself floating above the assassins. He comments on how pathetic it is for Schneide to send assassins to kill students and teleports the tied-up assassins to Schneide's room. Haruto confronts Schneide and shows a recording of him hiring the assassins. When Schneide panics and tries to deny it, he grabs a syringe and injects himself with a mysterious liquid. Haruto watches in disgust as Schneide transforms into a monster and has to block a punch from him, which sends Haruto crashing through the walls. Unsure of what to do with the transformed Schneide, Haruto suddenly gets a call from Char. Unable to sleep, Char checks in on him, and Haruto quickly makes up a story about fighting a monster. As Char watches, he starts to gauge Schneide's strikes, dodging and blocking his attacks. He realizes Schneide is stronger than Gan, the golem. When Haruto punches back, he finds it does no damage and feels almost crushed by Schneide's powerful grip. Using barriers, Haruto pries Schneide's arms apart to escape and freezes them in midair. He thinks about how to defeat Schneide when he sees Schneide rip off his own arms, regenerating them instantly. As Schneide lunges at him, Haruto dodges and notices Schneide seems to be getting smaller with each regeneration. Flying high into the air, Haruto calls upon hundreds of swords he had stored away and sends them flying toward Schneide. The blades shred Schneide's body until Haruto snaps his fingers, signaling the end of the battle. Schneide returns to his human form, and Haruto thanks Char for her help. He tells her to go back to bed while he cleans up the mess he made. Later, Haruto wakes up from a dream and greets his transformed self outside. They share how much more exciting their new lives are compared to their previous quiet ones. The next morning, Flea and Liza dig for information about the kingdom. They have to fight some thugs but eventually find interesting details. At Char's Night's Round meeting, Flea and Liza report that there's something suspicious about the Flash Queen, Gelot. Char concludes that evil forces corrupting the kingdom are already at work. To prove it, she shows footage of Haruto's fight with Schneide, impressing everyone and boosting their confidence in him. Char warns her knights to stay alert at school, as there will likely be more dangerous people around. The season ends with Char officially naming her team the Knights of Camelot, while Haruto secretly watches their meeting.